Earlier this afternoon, we were joined by the Yankee general manager, Brian Cashman. We started out the conversation by talking about the trade, and was it made to salvage the season? And if it was, are you concerned about the things that maybe things are beginning to spiral a little bit out of control?
I don't even look at it as a salvageable season. I think we've gone through, simultaneously a patch of poor play, but we've also, while that's been transpiring, ravaged with injuries. Mm-hmm. So we're getting our guys back healthy. We're reinforcing because it's the time of year to do so. And, we're right in the middle of the playoff hunt. And so whether it's the division or the wild card. So we're just trying to fortify and improve to the best of our abilities, and also wait for the remaining guys to get back off from the DL that we have, and hope to maintain who's healthy right now and go forward. So we're also coming out of a bad stretch, and that weekend in Boston with the 16 innings and the split doubleheader, then traveling to a time zone to Minnesota, and then getting up for a 12-10 game today. I just think there's a lot of combination of factors that are not meant to be excuses, but I just like for us to settle in here, and now with the new acquisitions, we'll hopefully have a new norm that that can propel us.
So let's take us through that then, Brian. Don and I spent much of yesterday talking about what would you do, what would the Yankees do to go out there and try and fortify this team, and what would they be willing to give up. And so Blake Rutherford winds up being the piece that you're willing to give up to bring in guys who could help you get down the stretch this year. Take us through the thought process there and how difficult it was for you to make the decision to pull a trigger on a deal for a young kid who projects as well as he does.
It's difficult, but we traded from an area of strength. I mean, obviously you use our farm system from draft and signings and development for eventual impact at the major league level from promotion, or obviously from utilizing as trade chips. And so when we're approaching this particular deadline with an improved, I think, roster as careful buyers, meaning we're going to continue the game plan of walking that tightrope for the present as well as the future of trying to maintain both, be the best we can be now and take a shot at the playoffs, and but not at the expense, significant expense of the future. So, Blake Rutherford is someone we're excited about. I think the White Sox now have just acquired a high ceiling player, but he's far away. And we have a number of players in front of him at that position, and so it made him more expendable from my perspective if the right deal came down. And what is the definition of a right deal? It was obviously to improve the club now, but also have controllable pieces moving forward. So Robertsons signed through next year. Headley is obviously entering his arbitration season this winter, so he's controllable for 3+ years going forward as well. So and then we plug a hole with Todd Frazier, that currently exists on the infield side. Joe can deploy him at first or third, depending on how he sees fit. So I think it addressed a lot of areas for us. And it didn't, cost us the immediate future that's knocking on the door that, we have currently much higher standing.
All right, let's talk a little bit more about Todd. You mentioned first base, third base. He's a third baseman in Chicago. He's played 94 games at first base, but how do you envision this working out? Can Headley play first base if he plays third? So just try to give us a little bit of a thumbprint on what do you think will be the game plan that you and Joe will line out for him.
I essentially have given Joe the keys to the kingdom on this. He's got the ability with the bullpen he's got now with Chapman, Betances, Robertson, Headley, and Greeny and Warren, and to mix and match from the fifth inning on as he sees fit. And then same on the infield side with Frazier and Headley. They're both capable of playing first base. Obviously, they clearly can both play third base. They won't be playing those positions at the same time, obviously. So I think ultimately Joe on a daily situation will look at the opposing pitcher and decide between Headley, Frazier, and as we continue to get to know Garrett Cooper and decide how best to deploy these assets to give us the maximum chance to win. And clearly Headley and Frazier will be getting the bulk of the playing time, whether it's third versus first. We'll get to hear from Todd Frazier, who landed right before game time, and I think once our staff gets to know him a little bit better and gets the verbal with him about his comfort level over at the first base side of it, he has played over there, but hearing how he feels about it, I think gives him more reassurance, and then Joe ultimately make the final call.
And then, of course, with the bullpen and the addition of the return, I should say, of Robertson, we just had Buster Olney on saying he thinks that right now your team may have the deepest bullpen he can ever remember. What conversations have you had with Joe about what we would anticipate Robertson's role being, and I guess everyone's role being now with all of the arms that you have coming out of the bullpen?
Yeah, Joe asked me this morning, hey, did you talk to these guys about their roles? And I said, no. I said, I did talk to the agents, last night, and when I did talk to the individual players, essentially our attitude is from the 6th on, be ready. I don't care who you are. And I guess Joe's probably going to talk to them about, in today's game, we obviously have to be available for that day. We have, guys with the ability to pitch in high leverage innings, and if the bases get clogged in the 5th inning and we're taking a starter out and he wants to bring a bigger name in early to squash it, he has more of ability to do that today than he did yesterday. And also obviously when you start using guys back to back, they're going to need a mandatory day off in between, and so we'll be able to turn to others that are certainly more than capable of handling the 8th and the 9th inning. So when it's not Batanzas or Chapman's turn, we easily have Robertson, who's been a closer for a long time, and Canley, who's now surging up the relief charts in this game, is someone that is probably earning the right to pitch in the 8th or the 9th. Chad Green has been doing some dominant pitching for us out of the pen this year, so it's just going to be a nice circumstance. At least that's our hope. But more importantly, like a game like today, we have to be able to get the balls, the ball into the bullpen's hands with a lead, and so we haven't scored runs today, and we didn't pitch well out of the rotation today, and so today's not going to be, we're still battling, but today's obviously not going as planned.
We're talking to Brian Cashman, general manager of the New York Yankees, here on the Michael Kay Show. We just had Buster Olney, as Greeny said, about how difficult it may be to make a deal for a starting pitcher. Are you comfortable with this staff moving forward if you can't pull the trigger on bringing another part of this rotation?
Yeah, ultimately we're down Pineda, which is not something we wanted or needed, clearly, and so we'll have to patch that from within if I cannot patch it from outside. Part of the method to the madness on the bullpen acquisitions wasn't just to improve choices out there, it's also to shorten the game in the event we can't get another starter. Let's close the gap and work from the 9th inning backwards, even though we might be dealing with a depleted man in the back of the rotation, whoever that might be, compared to what your preference would be. So ultimately I'll continue to work the trade phones with the opposing teams. If we can find a match, so be it. We'll be very aggressive. I think, our position that we took yesterday was, and we've been in the marketplace trying to be very decisive. If we found something that was workable for both teams, we were going to act. We're not going to wait for the best circumstance and then compare it and shop it all over the place. If this is something that makes sense, we're going to act on it to the degree we can.
Now, obviously, you made the deal for Frazier because you want a first baseman. That's been a problem since Greg Bird went down. And Brian, is there a level of concern for you that, this is 2 years now, we haven't been able to see Bird because of injury? Can there be confidence that he can still be your first baseman of the future?
Yeah, I think he's, I don't have any doubts about the capabilities that Greg Bird possesses. Unfortunately, he had a significant shoulder tear that needed to be surgically repaired, which he responded extremely well from after the surgery. And then ultimately he just had and it took a long time to diagnose. He had a very rare condition that was complicated in terms of diagnosing because of the bone bruise from a foul ball in March. But now that bone has been exercised, he possesses something that only 30% of the people on the planet, walk around with, and ultimately that got inflamed and needed to be removed. And I think the recovery time is anywhere from 4 to 6 weeks. And once that's past him, he can roll out of bed and hit. He's that type of capabilities. So he's our first baseman as we move forward without question. And just unfortunate that we lost him for so long.
All right, Judge, a little bit slowed here after the All-Star game. Did have a good game last night, going 2 for 4. But do you put any stock in the home run derby having anything to do with his struggles coming out of the break?
I'm sure anybody who's going to the game and playing, especially in the All-Star game, as well as the home run hitting contest, it's a lot. It's a lot of added features, but it doesn't matter. It's a great it's a great platform for our game and for these individuals. So even if it was, it is what it is. And, I know that we were asked questions early on, will we have any problems with Gary Sanchez or Aaron Judge participating in the home run hitting contest? And my response then is the same as it is now. It's my job to find more guys that MLB wants to put in that arena to be on the highest stage and to show off their great abilities and make the Yankee fans and this franchise proud. So if I can get more of those guys that push themselves into the mix to be all-stars and home run hitting contest contestants, that's what I want.
Yeah, that's a delightful problem to have. Actually, Don and I did just touch on this briefly yesterday. The commissioner of baseball was on my usual show, Mike and Mike, and suggested that Aaron Judge could be the face of baseball going forward, and people are comparing him to Babe Ruth and all of these numbers. I just wonder, you're around him on a day-to-day basis. He seems like an extremely level-headed young man, but that's a lot to be putting on a kid as young as he is in his first season. How have you seen him handling all of the attention and all of the expectations?
Extremely well. I mean, and I remind people, too, because clearly he's the flavor of the first half of this season now. But last year, from the second half, we had a different, player hatch, from our system, and Gary Sanchez that became noted as the face of our franchise from what he did in August and September last year, and that was while Judge was playing alongside of him as a teammate. And so it's pretty exciting times. These guys have all handled the notoriety extremely well. They're very grounded. They're very hungry to be the best they can possibly be. It's something that comes with the territory when you're playing in a big market, especially in New York, which is the largest media market in the world, probably. And so he's been great. And it's our job to find more of them like him. I mean, if we can surround, we had 5 All-Stars in the All-Star game, and if we can find more to go with it and put this team, at the highest level we can possibly get it, that's the job. But he's been fantastic every step of the way, and from draft position all the way through to where he is today.
Well, you're a Giant fan. You might be able to appreciate this. I wish there was more Aaron Judge and Odell Beckham Jr.
I don't mind personality at all, to be honest. Odell's doing his thing, and so, but it's good to see personality in the game, and that's one thing it's hard to change from people, So I am a Giant fan, and I'm clearly an Odell Beckham Jr. fan too.
All right, Brian, best of luck.
Thanks, Brian.
Again, any deals you want to let us know first, we always appreciate that.
You guys, they all seem to always leak before they're official anyway, so.
That's true. Any difference to this interview with Michael being gone? Did you feel more comfortable, maybe?
Absolutely.
Or did you miss? All right.
I felt good about the whole thing, too. Thank you, Brian.
Take care.
Always a pleasure to talk to the general manager of the New York Yankees, Brian Cashman. Coming up next, ENN with Andrew Gunling on the Michael Kay Show on the Yes Network and 98.7 ESPN.